Hey, thanks for stopping by. It's good to see you. I'm normal human being, Jarrell Dulay, and today I'll share a bit of my upcoming game that is something that I've been working on that I'm pretty excited about. Um, I've had a pretty difficult day. You know, I guess I'll post a link to the last video I posted, but a friend of mine recently told me that he's got 6 to 12 months to live, cancer. So I went to visit him today and catch up. Um, and it's so funny. I've driven to his house countless times, of course. So I hopped in my car and I'm driving over. And you know how you can get to places on autopilot? Like you don't really think how to drive to the shops, how to drive to your friends or your family house because you know where they are. I've driven to my friend's house, countless times on autopilot. And it was funny. I got in my car and I started driving and I forgot where my friend lived. Like I couldn't get to his place on autopilot, and it was like my brain just um didn't want to. You know, it's it's funny how our brains work. So yeah, I, I'll put a link to the last video that I put. So today I'll just want to hang out with you, and I mean I just want to talk about anything else. I want to talk about anything cool, anything positive. So I'm going to talk about my next game, my upcoming thing, the next game that I'm working on. I'll share a little bit about some hardware that I'm working on as well, and then I'll probably put in I wrote a song last night that I'll use in my games. I'll just make an instrumental version for my games, but I write lyrics and I'll put that at the end of the video. So the game that I'm working on, well, I've been working on a game framework, and the framework will allow me to make a number of my upcoming games very quickly. It's a series of tools, and it's like a backbone, and I build the game on top of it. And the tools let me make the game extremely quickly, so I can make games faster, which means that I can just focus on sharing really cool ideas and interesting stories and fun characters with you guys, and I can create interesting worlds and put it all together. And the framework that I've been working on will allow me to do that quickly. But the problem is that that takes an immense amount of time and effort. I've been putting in more than 110 hours a week. I haven't been sleeping well. There's a number of factors that go into me wanting to put in just as many work hours as I can during the week. So I've been pushing past 110 hours a week. Part of that is because you guys have told me that you're really enjoying the channel. You're really just enjoying the videos. And so I need to set time aside during my day to make sure that I make videos for you guys. So that takes a bit of time during the day as well. And so that means that I just have to put in more hours during the day. So I make the videos, then I work on my games. So I've been working on this game framework. It's production ready, but I'm trying to cram in as many features as I can because I know I'll be using it for many of my upcoming games. And so when you put in work hours like that, which I've done, for many times in the past for a number of my games that I've rolled out, I've pushed like 120, 130 hours a week with getting very little sleep in order to get games out in time. So I'm familiar with what I can handle in terms of a workload, and then I'm familiar with the recoil. There's a price that you have to pay if you're going to put in that many hours and stay productive the entire time and you work at your optimal speed. You have to be in good shape for that. Like if you're kind of sloppy, you can't maintain that. So you have to stay in good shape. You have to do body conditioning, and you have to eat really, really well leading up to that to prepare for it. So I've been putting in long work hours, but I can tell I can only handle I could probably handle 2 more weeks of that workload before I have to pay a serious price on that in terms of health. So I was working on some bigger games while creating this framework, and I thought I'll use it for this game. I'll use it for this game, but I've hit a point where I realized, oh shit, I cannot maintain this workload getting the game framework to where it needs to be and then do the game that I want afterwards, because the game also needs its graphics and the story and the events and all the stuff that go into it. And I realized, I can't actually handle that game because it's still going to take this amount of time to get the game framework where it needs to be to make that game, and then I have to make the game itself. So I make the framework and then the game, and then I realized I've really only got about 2 weeks left of doing 110 to 120 hours a week. I can really only handle that for 2 weeks. And if I push it, I know that I'm going to have to pay a serious price in terms of health. So I had to switch projects that I was working on. So I was working on some other stuff that were a little bit bigger, and then I realized, okay, I need to switch to a smaller project right now. So I have switched to a smaller project that the gameplay itself is, the story is shorter, it's a smaller scale, and it will allow me to use the game framework, and I can build this game in less than 2 weeks because of the framework that I've been working on the framework since the start of the year. I've been going, full bore, flat chat, as we say in Australia. It's basically working as fast as I possibly can. So I want to tell you about the game that I've been working on. And it's a story that, oh man, so I really enjoy post-apocalyptic stories, zombie stuff, all that. And I really wanted to write a post-apocalyptic story because I hadn't done one before. And the other week I was thinking it would be so cool to write a post-apocalyptic story. And so I've been working on one for a while, and so my next game that will be coming up is a post-apocalyptic story, and I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you what it's about. So, leading up to the story, there's an event that the people in this story, in this world, refer to as Day Zero, and Day Zero is the day that a red fog appeared, and what happens with the red fog is that if people get exposed to that fog, they get mutated, they turn into a Wendigo. And a Wendigo is just a creature that has an insatiable hunger. And these Wendigo, in this story, they basically function based on instinct, and they just hunt down humans and eat them. And so if you get caught in the red fog, you get mutated into a Wendigo. But there is an extremely small portion of the population, a very small percentage of the population, where instead of turning into a Wendigo, they manifest special abilities. They basically get, special powers. And these powers are not overpowered. They're not quite like X-Men, where X-Men, I've got, Omega level stuff. It's not quite that. The powers that you manifest are referred to as exhale abilities. And they're more grounded. They're not OP. They're a little bit underpowered, but they are helpful in some way. And some people get exhale abilities that are not that useful. Some people, maybe they can shoot fireballs out of their hands, basic things like that. Maybe some people get super strength or super speed. But they're called exhale abilities because you can only access these abilities that you gain. Again, some people gain abilities from being exposed to the red fog. They can only access their abilities if they take a deep breath and exhale and hold their breath. And that's how they're able to access their abilities. So say, for example, you have super strength. Well, in order to access it, you have to exhale. And so people that are able to gain abilities from the red fog, they're called exhale users. And their abilities are called exhale abilities. And to me, that is so interesting. To me, what is interesting about stories is the cost of power. What does it take in order to access your powers? What does it cost to gain your powers? And I think that's interesting. And there's no way to predict whether or not you will go into the fog and come out of it as a survivor and you'll have special abilities, or you'll turn into a monster. And so I think it'll be interesting to tell stories where maybe there's, a group of survivors and they're desperate, they're running out of supplies, and they're thinking, should some of us risk it and go out into the fog and see if any of us get abilities? And so I've written this story because I think it's so cool. It's such a fun concept. And it's based in a world that's not necessarily our world. It's Earth-like, but of course it's more of a sci-fi story. So before the red fog shows up, we have this world that I've written has pretty advanced technology. They have really advanced medical stuff and technology. And when Day Zero happens and their Wendigos just take over the world, it's basically only a small portion of the population left. The vast majority of population are now turned into Wendigos, and they're looking for humans to eat. And the way that the red fog works is that it's basically the same as high tide. You know how the full moon or the moon, you know, when it's a certain part of the earth, the moon has gravitational pull and it'll pull water. So you get high tide, you know, and the moon pulls water towards a certain part of the earth. That's how the red fog functions as well. Basically, the moon pulls the red fog. So, you know, certain times throughout the month, you'll have red fog. When there's a full moon and there's high tide, that's when there will be red fog. So people figure out, okay, so this is a safe time to go out and scavenge and hunt and try to get supplies and get food. And then they know, okay, there's a certain time of the month where there will be red fog and we need to, you know, get into the bunker or hide or do what you need to do. And I think that's so exciting. So I grew up absolutely obsessed with zombie stuff. I loved zombie video games and movies. And something that kind of always, I mean, it's part of zombies where you get bit, you turn into a zombie, but I always kind of thought that kind of sucked, right? Because it meant that you got like, cool, you got bitten, basically that character's basically dead now. And it kind of sucks because it limits the amount of excitement and tension that you can have with characters because it's too easy to hit the game over state, you know? And with the Wendigo story that I've written, I've tried to bypass that because you can get into a desperate fight with a Wendigo and characters can get really jacked up, you know, in terms of the fight, and they can get out of that fight, you know, taking a lot of damage but barely survive. So getting bitten or getting scratched by a Wendigo does not turn you into a Wendigo. Basically getting exposed to the red fog is the only thing that will turn you into a Wendigo. And it's the way that the story works is that you have to inhale the red fog. So if you hold your breath and if you're able to somehow get into shelter and escape, then you can escape your fate. You won't be turned into a Wendigo. Also, if you inhale the fog, you have 2 minutes. And what this world has, so I've created, of course, advanced technology. And in this world that I've written, there is something called a decompression mask. And they were invented for divers. You know, sometimes divers get decompression sickness or the bends. If they deep dive and then they rise to the surface too quickly, then basically the oxygen can rupture their blood cells. It can cause a lot of negative effects on their bodies. And so in this story that I've written, technology has created something called a decompression mask. So if somebody gets decompression sickness, they can wear the decompression mask. It'll sort of purge the air out of their body and it'll save them from getting the bends. You know, it's for divers. And in the story that I've written for the Wendigos, people figure out, wait, there's already these decompression masks. They figure out if you use the decompression mask, you can actually force the red fog out of your system, but only within 2 minutes. So if you inhale the red fog, you have 2 minutes to find a decompression mask. And some people start carrying around decompression masks. If you inhale a red fog, you have 2 minutes to use a decompression mask. You can force the red fog out of your system and you can survive and you won't turn it into a Wendigo. So I'm trying to write all of these things where I think, oh, you could write close calls for these stories. You can write characters that can get into situations where they get into really tense situations. It's really exciting and interesting. So I've been working on the lore of this story and trying to leave room for interesting, exciting adventures. So that's what I've been working on. So that's the first game that will use my new framework that I've been working on. Will be set in this universe with the red fog and the Wendigos. And I've been working on that. I'm working on the graphics right now, and then I'll program all of it this week. And I'm basically just gonna, pardon my French, I'm gonna haul ass and get the game done as quickly as I can. But I know that there's so many people out there like me who enjoy this kind of story. Like, thinking about this story makes me so excited, and it makes me think, oh man, I would watch the heck out of a movie like that. I would play the heck out of a game like that. And so that's the kind of stuff that I want to make. So that's what I'm working on first. And a lot of this new IP that I'm creating, I want to be able to make homebrew games as well. You know, I want to target legacy platforms. That stuff, of course, I do those games for free. I'll put the link in the description for my itch.io. You can play my homebrew stuff for free. So part of the reason I'm focusing on getting new IP launched is because I've been working on my own game platform, believe it or not. And I'll reserve that for a video to talk about it more, but I can share a little bit with you. But basically, I want to create my own game platform that is built on the philosophy of games that live with you. And I can show you the hardware. So I didn't create this watch. It'd be absurdly expensive and the logistics would be insane. So what I've been doing is I've been sourcing hardware from China. They make watches that run Android. This is the full Android operating system. But the problem is that games are not designed for the power of the hardware and the screen form factor and the screen size. So if you try to play, you can download anything from the Google Play Store, but it's just not going to work well. It's not designed for the screen. Stuff's going to be missing from the screen. It's going to be difficult to interact with anything. So my idea is to design games that are built specifically for this hardware so that they run well and that all of the UI elements work great. And the idea is multiple gameplay modes so that the games can live with you and the games treat you as if you exist in the game world. My idea is that during the day when you go to school or work, your game will be sort of on a passive mode where you'll receive messages throughout the day and it will be as if a character in a game is sending you a message and they might say something like, hey, I just found a treasure box. Do you want to open it? And then you'll get the message and you'll say, oh, sure, yeah, okay, I'll just click OK, I'll open it. You'll get some loot. There will be idle modes, for example, like a cookie clicker mode where it's just sort of like a blank screen with a button and you're doing other stuff and you just constantly tap the screen and then eventually it'll say like, hey, you just mined some material, you earn something from that. So there's idle modes. There'll be fitness modes as well. So it'll track your motion, potentially your heart rate, all of that stuff. So if you do a fitness mode, it'll give you rewards. It might give you buffs for your characters, experience points, things like that. But it's nothing that's too involved because it's meant to be living your life with you. It's going throughout your day with you. And part of it is, I mean, I'm a normal dude and I'm a gamer. Part of it is designed to be, say you're working at your office, you're sitting at your office, you're working at your desk, you're still gaming, your boss walks by, but it just looks like a watch, and he doesn't know that you're grinding for materials or grinding for rare loot drops. So there's a couple other pieces of hardware that I'll share with you, but the idea is that you're basically, grinding for resources during the day. When you get home, this wirelessly connects to your TV, and then you can have a full gameplay mode on the TV, where it's like a first-person shooter, a third-person shooter. You get to do some battles, some more involved stuff, and then your UI is actually on here. You get to see your health. You can swap items or magic spells or equipment or whatever while the gameplay is happening on your TV, and it wirelessly broadcasts. And I have written software. You can see sort of stuff running on there, but I've written software that does work. So I've run all that. It's all absolutely doable. So there's a couple different controllers that you'll be able to get with this thing. One is this ring. It's got 5 buttons on it, a D-pad and an OK button. And I'm kind of thinking like that just can sort of sit there. So you're at your desk. So with one hand, you're doing your spreadsheets at your day job. But you can see that you're grinding for materials or resources or items on there, and you're using this little button ring. So you're not even touching the screen like that, but you can glance over at it, and you can sort of see what's going on. Level up your stuff, your stats, your characters. You can use the button on the ring there. And it's pretty discreet. Your boss walks by and, you're like, hello, boss. Yes, I am working on spreadsheets. And he doesn't realize that you're, I mean, that sounds so delinquent. It sounds really bad when I'm not explaining it well. I'm not explaining it well, but come on. I mean, we're all gamers here. And here's some of the hardware as well. Like, so say you're at the full mode, what I call full mode, where it's connected to the TV, it's streaming gameplay. You can use these things, one in each hand. You can see you have 2 analog sticks here, and you can do it like a third-person shooter or first-person shooter. Actually, it should be the middle finger there, so that your pointer finger can access your triggers. You have your L2 and R2. You got your analog thingies, and you have your face buttons here. You can't push the analog stick in though. There's no L3 and R3, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, you can do a full gameplay mode, and you glance down at your screen there if you need to do stuff. And it's rechargeable, micro SD. I haven't seen these with USB-C yet, but they're rechargeable. This is there's other stuff, but you know what? There's other pieces of hardware to it and whatnot. I'll make a video when I'm ready to really roll this out. Basically, how it works is I make a buying guide I won't handle any of the hardware myself because I'm sourcing the stuff from China, from AliExpress, and I'm finding hardware. I'm making sure that the platform's compatible with it, but the platform I'm building is going to require these hardware. So I'll have a buying guide so you'll know what kind of Android watch you can buy, what the requirements will be. I won't have any partnerships with those shops, because they're constantly always changing their stock. So I'll have a guide, and you just follow the guide. You'll know what kind of watch you'll buy that'll be compatible, and it'll explain like what sort of hardware to buy for the controls and whatnot, and the hardware to connect it to the screen. So anyway, I mean, I just sort of wanted to talk about cool stuff. I wanted to talk about fun stuff for a while. So that's what I've been working on. Again, that's not ready to roll out. So the way that it's going to work is that the games for this game platform will be free. And the reason being is that it would be a nightmare to try to monetize this stuff. It would just be a nightmare, and it would ruin the creative process. If I had to source and distribute all the hardware myself and then create some sort of distribution method for the games that I create, it would take so much time and effort, and it would ruin everything. It would ruin the fun of it. And I'm a one-man band. And so I'm kind of thinking, look, I'll make a buying guide. People buy the hardware for themselves. I make the games for free. And how it'll work is the games that I make for these platforms will be in IP that I create for the mainstream platforms. So like the Switch and Steam. So that's why I'm trying to get as many new IP out as I can. So I'll have the Wendigo thing, and I have a bunch of other IP as well. Forest of the Fallen Wizard, Silver Falls, and other IP that I'll have. The games that are on here will all be based on those IP. So people can get the games on this Sungrand platform for free. The watch stuff, they'll play it for free. And if they enjoy that, if they like that, and they say, hey, I kind of like the story, I like the vibe of this thing, then they can go and check out my commercial games. And then if people want to support me, they can buy my games on Switch or Steam or whatever platform I roll it out as well. And that means that we can just focus on fun. And if people do want to support me further, they can contribute to my Patreon. I'll put the link in the Patreon, and that would really help. It'd be a huge help because this is it's expensive to develop for this stuff because I have to buy a lot of different hardware out of pocket, and I need to develop for a lot of different watches. I need to see what's on the market, what's common, what is available. Right now, a bunch of these kinds of watches are on sale for like 60 US. I've seen some for like 50, 60, 70, and they're really good quality. They've got great screens. Some of them are like AMOLED. They run full Android, but again, apps don't work well because, they're not really designed for a small screen like this, but they look fantastic. And so I've just been writing out my design philosophy rule book, but I want games that live with you, that are not intrusive. And like mobile games are pretty intrusive. They sort of dominate your life, and they demand that you spend time. They're really anti-consumer, like they're so predatory. And so I want my own platform where it's totally disconnected from mobile stuff. So I'm not going to put this stuff on phones. It's only for this platform because it's going to require all this hardware. It's going to require that the game lives with you. Characters in game will be sending you messages throughout the day. They'll say like, hey, I found something. Do you want to get a treasure? So there'll be idle passive game modes. There'll be active game modes. And it's something that I think would be so exciting and so interesting. And yeah, if you want to help me achieve that goal, then you can contribute to my Patreon. That would really help because I have to keep buying a bunch of these stuff. I have to write up buying guides so I can explain to people, all right, these are the watches that are compatible. Here are the prices. Here are the, positives and negatives. And everyone, has different style. We all have different tastes, and these watches look different. Some are quite sleek and thinner. And I know that the ladies don't want to walk around with the Omnitrix on their wrist, and this is basically an Omnitrix. Like this thing it's chunky, isn't it? And there are thinner ones that are slimmer and they're quite low profile, and so I have to buy those. I have to test them, and I have to make sure that I design my games so that they take into account the lower battery capacity, the lower processing power, because the thinner ones do have less battery power and they're a little bit weaker in terms of processing, so I have to design the games to work well on all the different hardware, and it gets getting pretty expensive. So if you want to help and contribute to that game platform, and hopefully in a couple months after I launch some new IP on the mainstream platforms, hopefully in a couple of months, I can launch this, I can publish the buying guide, and I can start talking about it officially. I'm talking about it unofficially right now. Like, this is basically just us chatting. And I just want to talk about something cool and think about something cool for a while. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. Thanks for listening. I hope you're looking forward to that stuff. I'll put the music in, some piano stuff. I wrote a song last night, and I'll play that. Okay. Thanks for hanging out. Take care. I'll see you around. Be well.
Father, can you hear me? I don't know if I see the point of it all. For a man to stand tall, Mama, this is goodbye. I don't know if I'll cry. I've seen it all before. I know I will be fine. So turn and hold my hand. Help me find the strength to stand. When I hear those angels sing, will I feel anything? Brother, I have been gone. I don't know if I'm wrong. Everything I know has been long gone. Everything that I see doesn't seem to mean anything the way it did before. So turn it on my hand. Help me find the strength to stand. When I hear those angels sing, will I feel anything? Turn and hold my hand. Help me find the strength to stand. When I hear those angels sing, will I feel anything? Will I feel anything?